see you, and Yazan is here as well now. So Yazan, still we can't. Okay, wonderful.
Hello?
Yeah, it's really good to see you. So we are expecting several more people on the call today, including Dr. Noor Ali, who I promised last week. I said she was coming from the USA. So she will be joining us because she just messaged me about half an hour as well. And because there's going to be quite a few people on the call, I was going to start by talking about our names and the origins of our names and how our names bring us to this conversation here. And I know Chris knows me from many years, so he knows how to pronounce my name, but I've got a feeling, Mohammed and Yazan, because I haven't really told you how to pronounce my name. so let me do that. My name is pronounced Jasveer. You see, it's pronounced Jasveer, and it's a Sikh name, and there are two parts to it. The first part, Jas, is pronounced like justice, like just, injustice. And the second part, Veer, it means warrior. It means, actually, there's two meanings for it in my language, in Punjabi. It can mean brother or it can mean warrior. So when it's written with a V, it usually means warrior. So my name, Jasveer, it's about justice and it's about being a warrior. So it's about social justice. Like, that's really important to me. That's one of the main drivers for me in my life, has been the value of social justice. And okay, wonderful. Dr. Noor Ali and Dr. Lucy and Shamil, wonderful, great. Okay, excellent. We're just doing introductions. So if you will allow me, I was just introducing myself and talking about my name being Jasveer. It's a Sikh name. Jas is, I was saying to Mohammed and Yazan, it's pronounced like as in justice, Jas, and the Veer part, the second part, Veer means warrior. And I was saying that my name, I identify with my name. It's one of the drivers, one of the kind of my top values in life is about social justice, and that's what brings me to this conversation here, is this the very powerful, strong driver about wanting social justice. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And Yazan, I know in my first conversation with you, you did explain to me about your name as well, and it's got a beautiful story
Yes.
with your name as well. So how do you pronounce your name, and tell us, how is that your name related to the Phoenix Rising and to the fact that you're in this conversation today?
Okay. First of all, I want to welcome all the new people with us here, Miss Shamil and Lucy and Miss Noor Ali. So welcome all. I guess I pronounced the names right. Okay. So let's talk about my name, Yazan. It's pronounced as Yazan. Okay. So actually, it's an ancient Arab name. It's not used like in the past, maybe you can say 20 years. So it has been like people used it like in the past 20 years only, but after that it was like hundreds of years ago. It was we can say a good king in Yemen. So this is the origin of the name. So his name was Saif bin the Yazan, which means Saif, the son of Yazan. So he was a good king based in Yemen. So we as Arabs believe that our all origins belongs to Yemen. So the origin or the original Arabs came from Yemen. So it's an Arab name. But like when we search about the meaning, Yazan means like it's related to fair, and I don't know how to explain it, but like what we can say that thing like Yazan, how to be fair.
Justice
Yeah,
is about being fair.
yes, exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, wonderful. And Mohammed, tell us about your name and how it's associated with you being here today.
Okay, so firstly, I really Happy to meet all of you, Noor, Mr. Christopher, Miss Noor, and Mrs. Lucy, and Mr. Shamil, and Nikita. How are you, all of you? So, my name is Muhammad in Arabic. It's come from the Prophet Muhammad. It's an Islamic name. Muhammad come from Alhamd. Alhamd is like thanks in English. There is Muhammad, there is Ahmad, Mahmoud. All of these like if I can say like the same. So my name is Muhammad, the Muhammad version, if I can say. It's that simple, and as I said, it's an Islamic name, come from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And Chris?
Oh, hi, good evening. Oh, it's good evening in this time zone. I don't know where you all are now. The USA, I think you're sometime in the morning now, aren't you? And I don't know about Egypt and Gaza, where what time it is. But yeah, my name is Greek originally. I was born into a Catholic family, and the name Christophorus means bearer of Christ. But I don't think it was chosen for its religious significance. So I was always being reminded in my childhood that's what it meant. But I rather think that at the time, which was in the 1940s, Christopher was an upper class name, and a lot of posh people on the BBC, the public broadcaster, whose name began with Christopher. So I think it reflected probably my mother's social aspirations for me. But since then, it's become quite a common name, and is not particularly associated with any class in the English class system. So that's it. My second name, Vaughan, is Irish or Welsh, so it's a Celtic name. Vaughan is just one transliteration into English. There's various English versions of the original Gaelic, so that puts me strictly in a sort of subgroup in this country. I always found that growing up as I did as a Catholic, that you were never quite in the English mainstream, which was white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and Catholics were looked down upon as outsiders, and it was forbidden for the king or queen in England ever to be a Catholic because of the religious divide in the 16th century, and the country turning towards Protestantism as a political as well as a religious act to try and escape the attentions of the Pope at that time. So that's my particular background, and a name that I've been given and live with and try to make sense of.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Noor?
Hey everyone, thanks for having me here. I'm in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, in the United States, so it's 2:30 p.m. for us here. Really honored to be in the company of people who are like-minded. How am I connected to the work that's happening here? I've, well, based on my positionality and also my area of work, I've done a lot of research around the experience of Muslim Americans in particular, and I'm currently involved in research around political activism in educational settings, a Muslim American experience, because everyone at this point is making a choice between silence or speaking up, and I'm interested in exploring that. My name, as just mentioned, is Noor. It means light. It is an Arabic name. I'm not Arab, but my name is. And really it is, I mean, I think the metaphor is shared across different traditions and cultures of illumination and what have you. But one thing that I like to think about in terms of my name is that in our faith tradition, there are 99 known attributes or names of God. And of those 99 names, one of them is the light. And it's quite interesting that out of all of these 99 names, the light is actually the only name that has a physical manifestation. The others could be considered more like personality traits, but something physical, this would be the only name that does that. So really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Noor. Lucy?
Hello. Yes, I'm glad I've gone after Noor. Thank you also for having me here. I feel very honoured to be present with everybody here. But my name, Lucy, also means light. And I think comes from Italian. I'm not sure entirely, Lucia, maybe. And I like what you were just saying, Noor, about it being physical, because my full name is Lucy Windridge Flores. Now I'm married to Shamil. And I love that I've got the light and the wind and the earth and the ridge and the florist with the flowers. So I really love that, all those very physical things. And our connection really being here, well, I mean, you know, there's the obvious connection that we're all feeling very deeply about world events. And Shamil and I, we've recently, well, we're in the process of relocating to South Africa. We're in Cape Town at the moment from the UK. And there are a number of reasons, but one of them is that we feel very uncomfortable about some of the things going on in the UK and feeling a bit done with it and feeling much more comfortable and able to speak in Cape Town about the things that matter to us. So it's a big move for us, and we've done some work together, some autoethnographic work together, exploring issues to do with Islamophobia in the UK. And Shamil will tell you a little bit about himself. So yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. And it's Dr. Lucy Windridge, and it's interesting that you talk about the opportunity to speak more in Cape Town compared with being here in the UK. That is. Yeah, I didn't know that you were out of the UK, but yeah, interesting. Shamil, go ahead, please. Tell us about your name and how that's associated with you being here.
For me, it's always just been a name given to me by my parents. I went through a stage in my life where I wanted to know what is the meaning of my name. And I came to the conclusion it doesn't really define who I am. But it's nice to think that all those names sort of gives you an inspiration to try and live up to your name. But anyway, I found out the meaning of my name. It means to complete. And that sounds quite nice, actually. I kind of like the meaning. I've completed many stuff, and I'm sure so has everybody else. It's also an Arabic name, although I'm not Arab. My surname is Flores, and as Lucy said, she denoted the florist to flowers, which is not actually flowers. There's a little story that says we originated from the island of Flores in Indonesia, close to the Sea of Flores. I don't really have proof of that. But according to that story, I am the 5th generation Flores in South Africa. And while I was living in the UK, I suppose I was over there as well, the 5th generation Flores. Yeah, I kind of like the reasons of coming here and being able to feel the freedom of speaking about the injustices in the world without being labeled as a lawbreaker. Mm-hmm. That's about it.
Okay, great. Yeah. And Nikita?
Thank you for having me, and sorry for being late. So my name, my mom always told me my name means a bundle of love, but I don't know if that's of like Sanskrit origin. I was actually Googling it when everyone else was speaking, so I'm not sure sort of what the origin is, because I know in sort of Greek and Slavic origin, it means victorious or unconquered. So yeah, I feel like I've resonated more with the bundle of love meaning sort of growing up and now as well, even though I do like the sort of the victorious side and that meaning as well to the name. In terms of I think the second question was what brings me here and what drew me to this, sort of being a part of this community call. I think this is my third or fourth call, if I'm not wrong, Jasveer. And I think what drew me to it was, I think very much similar to what a lot of people have said, is sort of, being able to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And I think what I've enjoyed, or sort of what's resonated the most with me, is sort of being able to sort of reflect on our experiences and culturally as well, and realizing how many overlaps there are. So I remember just we were the last time we met, which was I think the week before the last, we were reflecting on the injustices that Sikh people have faced over the years and our ancestors have faced, and how there sort of overlaps with so many other cultures, including what's happening in Gaza right now, and how we can sort of learn from our stories. So yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with like stories and sharing stories. And that's what drew me to be a part of this. So yeah, very, very grateful to be a part of this. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So one of the questions that my friends asked me is, well, how can I contribute? What's the purpose of these conversations? And I suppose, like, to summarize, it's a platform. This is a platform where we are learning. We're learning through storytelling, and that's one of the ways that we gain knowledge, is through stories. And there can be stories. We all know stories about what our ancestors experienced, and they're not our lived experiences. So when we talk about the Nakba 1948, we talk about partition 1947. None of us are old enough to have lived through those experiences personally, but those stories have been told to us by people that we trust, people that we know are telling the truth. We believe that they're credible, so that the stories are credible, and we gain knowledge through that, the third party, the third person expert experiences. And then we've got our lived experiences. So Mohammed is there in Gaza. He has this lived experience of being in Gaza right now. Yazan is a little bit more removed because you've moved to Egypt. So you're at a little bit of a distance, but you still have that lived experience of having to evacuate from Gaza. So those are our lived experiences. Each one of us have the lived experience of not being in the place of our birth, for example. We've all moved to some degree. So we have experiences, lived experiences, personal lived experiences of being uprooted from one place and having to recreate our lives in another space. And then what we're doing here is we are co-creating knowledge, because when I tell a story about how my family came here in the 60s with no money, only relying on relationships, others can relate to that. It's like, yeah, I know what that feels like. And so a connection is made. And so through those connections, we are co-creating the knowledge, like we're creating pathways that didn't exist previously. So that's how we are building these social bridges. We're building the connections, and through those connections, we create opportunities. And we started this conversation just 5 or 6 weeks ago, and it's expanding. The conversation is expanding, which demonstrates to me that there is heart in it. And when I use that word heart, I use that deliberately, because when we go to university, most of us, when we've studied at university, the focus is very much on the thinking, the intellectual ideologies, but very little is taught to us about the heart, the feelings that are universal, the shared experiences of love and joy, and all the positive experiences and all the negative experiences. And Noor I met at a conference earlier this year, and I've heard her speak, and I know that we share this interest in in being able to create knowledge from our lived experiences. So Noor, tell us a little bit about your autoethnographic work and how that is relevant to what Mohammed and Yazan are, what they're about in terms of recreating their lives.
It is a cross between autoethnography as well as narrative inquiry, because a lot of the work that I did earlier on, several years ago, was collect stories by Muslim American women, students, high school seniors, and undergrads. That's how it all began. And when I was doing that research, I was really looking at the lived experiences of these students in formal and formal educational journeys. And there were certain themes that were, of course, emerging from these stories that these people were telling me about. Now, the important thing is that I realized that to study the experiences of Muslims in America, we can say, but we can apply this in other contexts as well. There was no framework that existed to do that. There was no theoretical framework in place. So that's something that I did, is I created a micro-theoretical framework under critical race theory. And what that really does is something very simple. When you have a framing, you're saying we're not starting from zero. We're starting the conversation with some things that we already agree upon so that we don't have to belabor the explanation of our existence and our basic lived experiences. So in the absence of a framing, you are forever explaining Muslims have a right to live, they have a right to feel, this is what they're feeling, this is what their experience is like. Does Islamophobia even exist or not? So the lack of a framing was something on an intellectual front that mattered a lot to me. And it is closely related to the heart, because when we don't have space for these stories to be shared, we are essentially invalidating the existence of these stories. We're considering them irrelevant. And right now, as we see the genocide being live streamed, these are stories, and I don't want to call them counter stories or counter narratives. These are stories. These are narratives. These are real life glimpses that we're seeing. And yet, in the presence of something that is so blatantly true, there is this entire counterproduction to say it's not. So that for me is something that is so powerful. And I think any work that we do at this point that relates to Gaza is very difficult to work, because right now I'm collecting stories of students and faculty and staff in America, all of whom are making a choice of either being silent or speaking up. And as I speak to them, the stories that I'm learning are powerful stories. My participants often are crying as they're speaking, and every single one of them has said the same thing. Does it even matter what I'm feeling when, if I compare it to people who are in Gaza, are feeling so much more, that my experience doesn't even count as a fraction of what's happening there? So how can I spotlight myself knowing that there is something else that is so much more real? Like so all the people that I've spoken to are almost themselves undervaluing what they're experiencing, because they know something much larger than themselves is at stake and is being experienced. So, but essentially, here's the other thing. In academia, we keep talking about making space for people and for narratives and all of those types of things, right? Giving voice. My own dissertation was called that several years ago, making space and giving voice to the Muslim American experience. If I could do that over, I would erase that title, because it's an invalidating title. There's no giving space. People just need to shut up and listen, you know? This is not about giving voice to people. People have a voice. They are speaking. We are not hearing. They have space. that we occupy in all different shapes and forms, whether through all different types of colonizations. So it's not about giving space, it's about stepping back. And I think that that framing is really important. And, you know, we, as disheartening as it has been these last several months, it's important to remember. I think that piece is really important, because at the same time, while there is this deliberate, this is not happening, and this denial, at the same time, this is going to have implications on recall and remembering history, you know? And I think that piece of it is really important, is to make sure that we are actively engaged in this process. That's the other thing that really irks me, is like when people say, you know, what side of history are you going to be on, or what are you going to tell your grandchildren? Let's not futurize a live current genocide and speak about what we're doing right now, as opposed to what face will I have to show several years later. So there's a lot of thoughts involved in the process. Of course, my own positionality is being brown, Muslim, American, woman, in predominantly white spaces. I mean, there's a lot that goes on to it. The silence is haunting. The side that academia takes is disheartening in the least, and intimidating, and oppressive in many ways. So I think there's just so much to to talk about over here. But I'll stop. I want to hear from other folks as well.
Okay, all right. Yazin, what do you think about what Noor just said?
Yes, actually, it's the case of Muslims and in America and the Islamophobia. Actually, it's the same concept that Israel is taking here in Gaza. So every case that happens in the world, just like tell the world that Muslims has made this thing. So it's the same thing in Gaza now. Israel is doing genocide in people in Gaza, just by like we can say, for nothing. People, like hundreds and thousands of people, are dying for just nothings, for things that they did not do, even they did not do. Okay. And that's it for now.
Okay. And Lucy and Chanel, being in South Africa, how does, you know, what's your perspective? Because in the past, in some of these past conversations, I've said that South Africans understand what's going on in a way because of apartheid, you know, because there was decades of apartheid, and there was bloodshed after bloodshed. Innocent people were dying, you know, for decades before it was dismantled. So for me, there's that kind of empathy, because that's kind of quite recent past. It's not like hundreds of years ago that happened. It happened within our lifetimes. So what's your perspective on this, and especially about the fact that you feel more able to speak out in South Africa?
Muted.
Yeah, we were just deciding who was going to speak first. Yes, I mean, all you've just said is so. I was really moved and impressed by South Africa's stand at the International Court of Justice. I felt that was, I felt really hopeful at that time, and very frustrated that in the UK, we only had, unless we were watching Al Jazeera, we only had one side of that court case broadcast. But I felt extremely proud to be married to a South African at that time, and I think it's a fantastic thing that South Africa has done, because out of anywhere, South Africa maybe has the closest understanding. I mean, I don't know that. That's just an assumption, but a really close understanding of some of the experience of Palestinians. Although I I think there is a sense here that, like you were explaining there, Noor, of people feeling it was just never as bad as what's happening in Gaza. And we sort of heard people sort of speak that. You know, you should know that everywhere around in Cape Town, and we were only in Cape Town, there are Palestinian flags flying everywhere, and regular marches and a lot of feeling, a lot of strong feeling. But I didn't live through apartheid. I was a student in the 80s and 90s. I was, you know, university student in the 80s and 90s, and went on the anti-apartheid marches, but I didn't really understand. I had an idea. I had a sort of very naive sense of justice around that. I didn't really understand, but there were lots of marches at that time that I was involved in. But Shamil did live through apartheid, has his experience of apartheid. So hand over to you.
Yeah, apartheid is a word coined in Afrikaans. I'm not quite sure if it stems from South Africa. I think it's an Afrikaans word. I presume it comes from South Africa. The concept of apartheid, yes, it is applied in Gaza. Although the experience of the apartheid that I lived through, it pales to what's going on today. There's no real comparison. I mean, yes, there was a lot of bloodshed in my time of living through apartheid, but not the bloodshed that we're talking about now, or seeing now, or hearing stories of now. Ours was done by the secret police. It was supposed to be secret, and you feared for your life. But nobody sort of shot us with sniper rifles and bombed us. No. So the feeling is really intense of what the people are experiencing today. And yes, I'm quite chuffed with the idea that South Africa actually took the mantle of going to the ICJ. And I think it didn't do anything. We were quite shocked at one stage when the result came out, and everybody was impressed other than the Palestinians. And because I don't think anybody, most people didn't really realize the extent of the carnage that was happening. And for the years, for over a number of years. But it is not a nice thing. It wasn't for us, and I'm sure it's definitely not for them. My heart goes out to them. Thank you.
But, you know, I do remember Nelson Mandela talking about the Palestinians and saying, they helped us, now we have to help them. I do remember a speech, and you see that concept is the concept of goodwill. Goodwill, because you remember who was your ally. You remember who were your allies like decades ago. And you know, like taking it back to the business thing, you know, like, because Yazan, you're creating this concept and you're creating a brand, you know, the Phoenix Rising will be a brand, and it's creating something from nothing, and you want something to be associated with it. And we talked about trust and loyalty, and I would say also goodwill. You see, because this thing about goodwill, it has value. Goodwill has value. We talked about Nelson Mandela saying now we've got to help the Palestinians because they helped us. Like if a solicitor, for example, is you know, they're retiring and they're selling their practice, when they do a valuation of how much their business is worth, they include this thing of goodwill. You know, how much is the goodwill worth? You know, like those are the relationships that they've cultivated over the last few decades with that community that has a financial kind of aspect, you know, relationships. So goodwill, that's one of the things that like, for example, when my family came to England, people helped them not because my parents had helped them previously, that they weren't returning the favor to my parents. They were returning the favor done by someone else, you know, like maybe my grandparents or an uncle, you know, who was like not even in England. And so this thing about goodwill, it's transferable. You can pass it on to others. And so the reason I'm talking about goodwill here is like going back again to that question of like, what is it that we're doing here with these conversations? Well, we're building bridges, we're making connections, and we are forming a community. And we know that communities are powerful. Communities generate power, they generate creativity, they generate, you know, new ideas, new insights and whatever. But how do we form that community? Well, number one is presence, showing up. You know, like, you show up to a conversation like this, that showing up, that presence, being present in this kind of conversation can be controversial. And for some of my colleagues, they don't show up because, you know, that they feel that they have something to lose by showing up in a conversation like this. So that presence, taking a stand, that in itself is an act of resistance in a way. The presence is an act of resistance. You show up, you communicate, and it's through those communications, through being heard, through listening, that's how we generate community. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it happens through relationships, and it happens through the feelings. Because again, like going back to my parents, when they came to the country, they didn't speak English. So how did they form communities with their neighbors who were English, you know, on both sides? They formed very deep relationships with their English speaking neighbors, not by speaking with them, but by gestures, you know, by demonstrating that they were, you know, that they wanted to create goodwill. And there's lots of ways that you can demonstrate, express your love for someone without the language to speak it. And so that's the purpose of these conversations. And so going back now, Mohammed, to yourself, you are in Gaza. We are in places of privilege because we are safe. You know, I'm in a safe environment, and that's why I have the privilege to be like an anchor, to be an ally. I don't need to I don't need to be as sad as somebody who's in Gaza to be an ally, because it's through my strength and through this privilege that I can be a strong anchor and say, look, you know, here's a thread of opportunity, here's a pathway. You know, how does, you know, making these connections with those who are in places of safety, including Yazan, who's now in Egypt, you know, how are you feeling supported by making connections with those who are not in Gaza like you are?
Well, this will help me to deliver my voice, my suffering to the people, that these people will, if I can say, can continue the delivering. These people who can deliver my voice, like I can just deliver my voice, my suffering to these people, and then they will deliver it to another people, and the other people will do the same. So we can, like, if I can say, making it as a network. So each one will deliver it to another, and the other will do it the same. So by this, our voice will be spread globally, and all the world can hear our voice. An example about this, what happened like months ago in America with the students of the universities and their protest. Even the police was so much violent against them, and they did, and the protesters, the students, they didn't stop even this. This was a great example about delivering our voice. We deliver our voice to the people who take the voices and spread it and deliver it to other, like the students, and then the students do the same, deliver our voice to all the people, for example, in America, to the politician, even actually the politician didn't listen, didn't do anything. We had, and I hope that maybe this will change the politicians' mind as they are in America, just give the weapons to Israel to continue killing us. But even like this is didn't happen, but we still happy and proud about what happened with these heroes, if I can say, the students that was leading the protest, and I'm still have a hope that when the students back again to the university will do the same and will delivering the voices of the people in Gaza. By the way, right now, after like couple days ago, the Israeli forced many people from many places in Deir el-Balah, where I live, to evacuate. They also today make another another orders to evacuate from another places in Deir el-Balah. So the situation is be like more difficult. I don't know. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week the place where I am will have the same orders, then I will have to evacuate again. And don't ask me where, because seriously I don't know where I will evacuate. There is no a place is safe. And if the million if find a safe place, simply there is no any space. It's so much crowd. There is just a small area, so much people there. We are talking about million person in the very small area. Where we can go, we don't know. There is no homes and buildings because it's destroyed, and the small buildings that is still not destroyed, not fully destroyed, there is people there. So we will have to make a tent. There is no tent, and if there is a tent, there is no place. So I don't know if we had an order to evacuate, where actually would go, where the other people. There is many, like the place where I am, the streets, so much crowd that the ambulances will stuck. They need like more, so much time to can go to the hospital or can go to save another people that were bombed by the Israeli. The situation is so much terrible, and it's going to be so much worse that we cannot imagine. And now we are just not imagining it, we are living in it. So I don't know actually what I have to say or what I have to do, or I don't know actually, but it's going to be more worse and more terrible here.
Yes, it's very, very, it's tragic. Chris, do you have something to say? It's kind of, I feel at a loss for words, with that experience that Mohammed is living through.
Well, it's very difficult to say anything from, as you say, Shazvia, from the safety that we have at the moment, living as we do, to put yourself in a place that Muhammad is living through, and to be faced with someone who is out really to destroy you and your people, and although the South Africans have rightly said that Netanyahu and his henchmen are international criminals, no one seems to, and they will be arrested in certain places if they move, but really no one's laying a finger on them and letting them get away with this. So it is so difficult to say things that just seem so away from the immediate situation. I mean, I've had lots of thoughts during the discussion, around the situation in South Africa, for instance, and maybe the South Africans, as well as presenting what right-thinking people really know, is that previous to this, they had a Truth and Justice Commission after the days of apartheid and the bogus theories that they were produced there about separate but equal and the Mosaic Society, which was a complete lie. And it was just a white supremacist regime. And Mandela, in his wisdom, set up a framework where there could be forgiveness and where there wouldn't be revenge for all the wrongs that have been inflicted, so South African society could move forward. So whether there might be a time when Palestine can start to thrive again and be recognized internationally and move towards a society that's equal and just. I think the South Africans have provided a model, and I admire you for going there. And obviously, it's a society, as you say, that Islamophobia is not recognized. Now, we've just been through, we've just thrown out a government that reveled in Islamophobia, and they used it as a means of creating division in British society so that it would distract people from the mess they were making with their policies. And funnily enough, a lot of the Islamophobia that they peddled was instituted by South Asian immigrants and not probably realizing the tiger that they were riding. And of course, once that government disappeared, then the far right wing appeared on the streets with bricks and started to attack the Muslim minority. And one of the things that the last government did was it refused to actually give a definition of Islamophobia. So we all know what anti-Semitism is. There's a definition for that. And we know when someone's being anti-Semitic. But there was no legal way of recognizing Islamophobia in the British society. So they were allowed to say all kinds of things about Islam which wasn't true and get away with it. They're getting a bit nervous now because people are beginning to realize that because they've incited rioting, that they're beginning to look back and find out what sort of things are being said that have caused people to appear on the streets and want to be violent about their views. So, but I come back to the fact that we are in a situation in Gaza, which at the moment there doesn't seem to be any way out, and hopefully maybe international public opinion might start at last to apply some kind of pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nikita, do you have a comment for Mohammed?
I think I've been reflecting a lot based on what you've been saying, Mohammed. I think on sort of the stories of the partition of India and how much was sort of unsaid. And the only reason I think is because when my grandparents migrated from Sindh in Pakistan to India, and basically everything he was saying about sort of, the lack of space and not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow, I think it reminded me of those sort of unheard stories, because I haven't, my grandparents died when I was quite young, so sort of not having had the chance to have that conversation with them about what it must have been like and how they sort of migrating from one country to another were few of the very, very lucky ones, and how many people would have been left behind and wouldn't have made it, or would have made it but would have had to leave family members behind. So yeah, I just think it's just everything was sinking in, and it's really hard. Yeah.
And this is where, like, we have to distinguish between what is positive thinking and what is optimism, because it would be very kind of superficial to say, oh, but you have to think positively. You have to kind of like think that everything's going to be okay, when you know it might not be okay. So, but optimism is different to positive thinking. It's not about falsely kind of like changing your beliefs. Optimism is where your faith is. Optimism is where your faith is. It's like that full and absolute trust in, you know, in the faith that has given you life. You know, whoever has given you life, or whatever has given you life, have faith in that. And it's that intelligence, that innate intelligence that comes from that, which is not simply about our thinking, but it's that state of being, you know. And during war, purposely, you know, like the confusion and that fear that you feel, Mohammed, that is on purpose. That's the whole point of like these genocidal strategies, is to take away the optimism, is to ruin and to devastate the spirit, you know, to break the spirit. And once the spirit is broken, the war has been won already. And Yazan, like with the phoenix rising, you know, how does optimism enable that phoenix to rise? Tell us about that, Yazan. Tell us about the phoenix rising.
Okay, first of all, I want to add what about what Muhammad has said. So actually, the situation in Gaza now is so bad. As Muhammad said, the people in Gaza, more than 1 million, are located in, we can say, 10% of Gaza Strip. So people are located in only 10% of that. Like there's mothers, there's children, there's old people. All are living in bad situation, and as Muhammad said, they are living in tents. There's no buildings, or if there is a little buildings, and these buildings are destroyed, maybe completely or even partly. Actually, here in Egypt, when I came, I used to like define myself as a genocide survivor, but actually it turned out that I'm wrong, actually, because you as a Gazan or a Palestinian from Gaza, you will be like you will not survive anywhere in the world. So here in Egypt, I like I receive bad news every day, like the news of destroying our house, the news of killing my cousin, my friends. A lot of bad news we are getting every day. We are living in a stress every day. We have lost everything, even if we are not in Gaza, but we are feeling the fear on our relatives, our friends, and our beloved ones in Gaza Strip. So we are just like praying for them to be safe and to be in a good place, and to just stop all these genocide. And I want to mention thing that the bad governments are like taking these things like Islamophobia, African Americans, or even Palestinians, to just make it legal to do genocide or to do bad things. As we know, like a few years ago, there were like discrimination against the African Americans, and just the claim of the African Americans in America are like doing, we can say, bad things, or killing people, or stealing, and all these things are wrong things. Why? Because maybe one or two have done bad things. It doesn't mean that all African Americans are bad, or all African Americans can or deserve to be killed or to be treated unwell. And if we like search about it, we can find maybe original Americans. There's no original Americans. We can say white Americans. Like we can say they are killing more and more than African Americans. That's the same thing that Israel is doing right now. So they are claiming that there are terrorism in Gaza here. So that thing, or that claim, like they are trying to make it legal to kill 1,000 or hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. So the children, what they have done to be killed? Like every day we have hundreds of children are being killed. So the same thing, every bad government just doing this thing to be like in a good image, like in the world. Okay, so let's go back to the Phoenix Rising. All these things give us hope to just raise again. As we said, Gaza as not as like this ancient thing called Anqa in Arabic, which means phoenix. So Gaza, like around the ages, have raised itself from death. Me as Yazan, I'm 20 years old. I have faced, we can say, more than 5 wars, like 2008, 2012, 2014, 2019, 2021, 2022, and finally 2023. We have faced 2 wars, actually. There's one in May, and actually ended after a week and a half. And then we get back again with a new war on 7th of October, and still continuing until now. So the concept of Phoenix is that Gaza raised itself from death, and there was like a place in Gaza, or a phoenix itself. It was in the middle of Gaza city. Okay, so that phoenix represents every Gazan people, or Gaza itself. So as all these wars I mentioned, Gaza rebuilt itself and get back to what was people doing before that war. So for me, I believe we will rebuild Gaza again, and it will be better even than before the war. And for me, it's like it depends on everybody. Okay, so everybody should start with himself. So me, I should start with myself. I just evacuated Gaza since 6 months, we can say, or 5 months. So since I have evacuated, I should start my raising for myself, and everybody in Gaza should start raising himself because of Gaza, or to build Gaza, or that is the concept of Gaza. So we will be stronger than before, and we will do magnificent things as we always used to. As we know, like there's a lot of Palestinians and Gazans along the world. They are doing magnificent and great things, and we will be like that, and we will continue.
Okay, yeah, wonderful. And it's about the individual doing, like imagining a life that is better for others. And I think that kind of inspires us, like Mohammed, like your sister's baby. If you look at your sister's baby and you think, what can I do, to help that baby who can't help itself, that kind of, for me, it always drives me to, even if I feel sad. When my brother died, I felt very sad. I didn't want to do very much, but then you think about somebody else that you can help, and that kind of, for me, it always motivates me to use my energy in a way that will be helpful to others rather than simply being sad. So does anybody else have anything else to say before we end our call today? So on a positive note, next week we're expecting another guest as well, who is from Pakistan. We've talked several times about partition, and we talk about the safety, about distance. Mohammed is in Gaza, he's not safe, but the rest of us at a distance, we are safe. But there's also safety in terms of time. Partition in 1947 was, I think, millions of people died during that partition, or if they didn't die, they were displaced. They were made refugees in their own country, basically. But now it's 70 years later. So there's safety because we are 70 years further on from that. And there are people on both sides of, like, where that line was drawn in Punjab, dividing it into Pakistan and India. There are people on both sides of that border who want to heal the traumas that happened and next week on the call, hopefully, because in Pakistan it's a lot later, so they're about 5 hours ahead of us, but he did say that he wanted to come on the call, and he's doing work to heal traumas for Sikhs who we lost access to our religious places of worship. Most of our religious places of worship ended up in Pakistan, the other side of the border, and we couldn't go back and visit the birthplaces of our gurus because we weren't allowed to go to Pakistan until quite recently. So he'll be joining us, and so that will be an example of like how time, I know it's not helpful in the present, but time does heal, and and things happen in cycles. And Mohammed, I remember a few weeks ago, I remember you saying that you just hope that this is going to be the last war. Hopefully it'll be the last war for Gaza, but wars will be happening in other places in the world, so there'll be somebody else who's suffering like you're suffering now. It may not be the Palestinians, it may be people in Myanmar, it may be people in Colombia, it might be but wars keep on going on, and what maybe we can do something just to help one person. If we can help one person, that will make our actions valuable. So thank you everyone for being on the call today, and hopefully I will see you all and more next week.
Thank you for everyone here. Thanks really from my heart.
Thank
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.